In this video, we will go over the big ideas of Chapter 5. So I will first start off by saying I really can't emphasize how important this chapter is. I can honestly argue that this chapter is the most important chapter when it comes to finding success later on in grade 11 and grade 12. So if there's any chapter to do all your homework in and practice a lot, that'd be the one, okay? And I hate to say this, but students find this unit the most challenging because it does require the most amount of practice. Anyways, I really hope you remember what we did in Chapter 4 actually, because the only reason we introduced Chapter 5 is because we couldn't progress with our conversation about quadratic relations. We did everything we could, but we had to take a quick break and upgrade our algebraic skills, and now we can keep talking about quadratic relations because we can actually do a lot more now that we are able to expand and simplify, like multiplying binomials, and of course you can now factor very well, hopefully. So with those skill sets, with those algebraic skills that you've gained in this chapter, you can do a lot more, okay? Because you are really limited, you're really restricted when it comes to your algebraic skills prior to this unit. All you could do is collect like terms, solve linear equations, and apply the distributive property. But that was very little. Okay, so you know what? Let's go over the big ideas. So the first thing we did was multiplying binomials. So I gave you a quick example. I didn't write it down, but one of the most common mistakes is when students write like 3x minus 7 all squared. Okay, please don't write 9x squared plus 49. Now, hopefully by now that you know what a perfect square trinomial is, you can expand this very easily, right? A squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So 3x times 7 is 21, so it's minus 42x plus 49. It really goes hand in hand. Your ability to expand and simplify will really improve your ability to factor. Okay? Then after we multiplied binomials, we talked about common factoring. We talked about factor by grouping, so I gave you some examples there. Then we moved on to factoring simple trinomials. We talked about factoring complex trinomials. With complex trinomials, we talked about two different techniques, and we really said try not to use decomposition. Really try to master your ability to factor complex trinomials. So use that guess and check technique, and hopefully when you do enough times, you're really not guessing very much. And then the last two techniques were difference of squares and perfect square trinomials. We put those two together because these expressions, these two factoring techniques can only be applied when the expressions are very unique. Okay, so when you have a difference of squares, that was very special because you got that expression by multiplying a pair of conjugates. Okay. And that's the only time when you multiply a pair of binomials and the result is a binomial. Okay, because usually when you multiply a pair of binomials, you get a trinomial. So those statements really make a difference of squares a very special expression. A perfect square trinomial is also very special because this trinomial is a perfect square. It was obtained by squaring a binomial. So hopefully you really see that how these expressions are special, because if you can see how they're special compared to other expressions, then that will really help with your factoring of those expressions. Anyways, we gave you lots of practice on each technique, and we even gave you some questions where the different techniques were scrambled. Okay, so you didn't know, like, if I just because on the test I'm not going to label which factoring technique you have to use. So it's up to you to master all the techniques and know when to apply each technique. Okay, so that's basically Chapter 5, and with Chapter 6 we're going to jump back in with quadratic relations and finish the job that we wanted to do in Chapter 4, but we couldn't.